look at the need. Here in America, wherever you are, there are needy people that maybe don't have physical or material needs, but they need the gospel. And so I think if you look at the need and you're loving the Lord, you'll see through His heart, His eyes, the needs of people.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, where we take you to the front lines and behind the scenes of our work around the world. I'm your host, Kristy Graham, and back in 2019, I got to sit down with Aileen Coleman, who is a longtime partner with Samaritan's Purse and a giant in the faith. Aileen was a missionary in Mafraq, Jordan for more than 60 years and has been one of the key people in Samaritan's Purse President Franklin Graham's life. Aileen recently went to be with the Lord. And while many of us miss her presence and influence here on earth, we cling to the example and legacy that she leaves. We know that she is with the Lord. As Philippians 1:21 says, to live is Christ, to die is gain. She truly lived for Jesus every single day, and now she has gained eternal glory with Jesus Christ. And now, in honor of her memory, I want to share this conversation again. Her example spurs me on to share the gospel, to invest in my prayer life, and to live sacrificially. I first asked Aileen how she ended up with a call for missions on her life.
Well, I didn't plan to be a missionary. In my growing up years, I had a wonderful praying mother and a father who was a believer. And I was the youngest of 7, and I had decided when I was about in my late teens, when I get to college, I'm going to do my own thing. And I chose to rebel. And for 4 years, I rebelled very seriously. I broke my parents' hearts, but I knew I was doing wrong. And I went to college, and I became known as the happy drunk. And I was invited to parties because I was entertaining. So I was trying to get as far away as I could from parental control and from doing what I knew was right. And so my first 3 years of college, I did everything I thought was good, which was not good. It was destroying me. And I remember one time I was in the nurse's residence, and somebody said, "Hey, there's a circus down the road, a big tent." And I grew up in a small town, and I went down to look, and I said, "There's no animals. How can it be a circus?" The second night of they called it a revival. It wasn't a revival, it was evangelistic. I was dared again by my fellow students to go, and because I couldn't reject a dare, I went. And that night I heard the voice of God, and my life lived for Aileen Coleman was over. And I didn't need another dramatic conversion experience. I knew the gospel. I'd heard the gospel. But that night I realized that my life had been changed in a minute. And I'm still growing in faith. I haven't arrived yet, probably not until I get to heaven. But straight away I knew that I was going to be a missionary. I had no bolt of lightning from heaven, but I knew that this is what God had in mind for me. My parents were in shock, and my former student friends dropped me. And so I thought, well, missionaries delivered babies. So in my postgraduate work, I did what in Australia they call bush obstetrics, where nurses do a lot of procedures that usually doctors only do. And so I finished that, and I thought, now I've got to go to Bible school, because I thought that's what missionaries did. I'm so thankful of the 2 years I had in Bible school, because I needed that understanding of what God wanted for me to understand from His Word. And so I took, not all the grave clothes had fallen off, so I went to Bible school loud. And one time the Dean of Women said, "You're like your climate." I grew up in Queensland. She said, "You're loud and you're hot, so calm down." I didn't. I'm still working on that one. But I think to keep me busy, she gave me the worst assignment in the school, which was the Muslim world. I had visions of being a missionary translating the Bible or doing something very exotic, but God. And so I had to prepare a paper for graduation. So I wrote to one missionary lady, obstetrician, in what is now the Emirates. And she wrote, she did not know I was a nurse. She just knew I had to complete this assignment. And at the end of her letter, she wrote, pray that God will send us a nurse who's had postgraduate work in OBGYN. And so I often say to people, be careful what you pray for, because God might hear you. And so that was my call to the Muslim world, to the Middle East. I didn't continue delivering babies because we had a small hospital, maternity hospital, where we only got very complicated cases, and I only had enough Arabic to tell the patients how to deliver a baby. Push, don't push, breathe. And so I felt very frustrated that I couldn't speak to patients. I wanted to tell them about Jesus. And so I asked if I could go to Jordan to study Arabic. And I was sent to a tuberculosis hospital where they treat mainly Bedouin patients. The Bedouins are these wonderful people who live in tents in the desert, descendants of Abraham through Ishmael. And it was there I realized that this was where God wanted me to be. And I've just delivered a few missionary babies since, for the last 60 years, I've been in Mafraq.
Love the way the Lord led your steps. So you mentioned that you had a praying mother, and when you rebelled and you walked away from the Lord, what advice would you give to parents or listeners who are faithfully praying for their children or loved ones who don't know the Lord?
I broke my mother's heart, but she kept praying for me, and she kept loving me. I knew I was wrong. I didn't have to have her preach at me. And if some of you mothers have got sons or daughters that are wandering away, just keep praying. Be available for them. And don't preach at them too much. They know they're wrong. And be ready for them when they come back.
And so when you were just 24 years old, you left to go serve as a missionary. What advice would you give to 24-year-old Aileen?
It's a wonderful life. It's a hard life, but it's a life full of blessing, full of wonderful happenings when you see what the Lord's doing for you and through you. And I would say, as if there's any young people, be sure of your call.
So you touched a little bit on the Bedouin people. Can you introduce us to them and the people you've fallen in love with? You've become a blood brother.
Yes.
With them.
They're mainly shepherds, although some have been educated now. And how could I describe them? They're proud. They're arrogant. They're satisfied with their lifestyle. They're very loyal. It takes a long time to be accepted, but once you have a Bedouin friend, you've got a friend for life. But they're Muslim, needing Christ.
So what kept you focused on the mission? You endured wars, turmoil in the country. Your dear friend passed away. How did you keep serving and going?
I found that my answers to all situations are in the Word of God. And I remember when Eleanor Salto, my colleague of 42 years, was killed in a fire in her apartment. I thought, how can I go on? But it was then I was just reading in Joshua 1 where it says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now you cross into Jordan. And I thought, I'm already in Jordan. The command of Joshua 1:9 was, which spoke to my heart after Eleanor was killed in a fire, my colleague of 42 years. God spoke to my heart when he said, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified and discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
So how did you come to terms with contentment in the field? You never married. You're single.
Happily.
How did the Lord work in your heart?
When I was in Bible school, I was engaged to be married to a doctor who was going to call to Africa. Was then Tanganyika, it's now Tanzania. And when I was sure that God was calling me to the Muslim world, it was rough. We agreed, both of us agreed to break our engagement, because he was convinced that God was calling him to Africa.
Wow.
And I remember I cried a whole night, battling with it. I knew I heard God's voice, but it hurt. And so then I think we thought at that time it would be like Abraham offering up Isaac. We'd get back together. It didn't happen. But I think that initial breaking of a relationship sort of helped me to realize that marriage is good, but God has chosen for me a better path. That's being completely ready to serve him happily as a single woman.
How could you encourage some of our listeners who might be single and aren't content with that? How could you encourage their hearts today?
You know, so often in the Bible, God has used single women. I think of Deborah, who led a whole army. She was single. And there are many other women, we don't know if they're married, but I think Mary of Bethany was single. And I love children, and I'm crazy about kids. But you married ladies know mothering children is more than a full-time job. And so it's freed me to be able to be available for whatever God wants.
But you said you love children. You never have had children of your own, but you've raised many children. And there are actually some namesakes in Jordan.
There are 3 little Aileens in Jordan. My granddaughters, it's been my privilege to raise mainly orphan children or abandoned children. The last little girl I had, she was very neglected. So I keep them in my house and just love on them.
So we talked about Dr. Eleanor. You mentioned her. Could you tell us about your sanatorium and the work you've been doing?
I hadn't met Eleanor Salto until I went to study Arabic in Bethlehem. And Eleanor was a pulmonologist who herself had 4 years in a sanatorium in Albuquerque for tuberculosis. And she specialized in chest diseases and came to Jordan the year before. She came in 1954. I came in 55. And I met her. And I learned a lot from her. She was a missionary kid from Korea. And so I learned a lot about continuing in prayer. I'm very enthusiastic in the start, and I prayed for a long time, and nothing's happened. Let's think about something else. But Eleanor used to say, she'd call me dearie, and that sometimes would make, when I was really complaining, she'd say, rejoice, dearie, and I would like to kill her. I didn't want to rejoice, I wanted to complain. But I was blessed to have a fellow missionary mentor in Eleanor Salto.
When I think of you, I think of Philippians 1:6, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. That's what I think of when I think of you. You just kept carrying that torch. You keep carrying it. You are not retired. You continue to serve. And can you just tell us when you did get weary, what would you do? You said you relied on the Word.
Go read a book or play with my babies.
What motivates you today?
The call of God that came to me 90 years ago to be his witness among people who've never heard the gospel.
There's a quote by Teddy Roosevelt that says, "For us is the life action of strenuous performance of duty. Let us live in the harness, striving mightily. Let us rather run the risk of wearing out than rusting out." And I love it because you always wanted to run the risk of wearing out, not rusting out. And I think so often, especially in America, we can become comfortable and rust out rather than wear out.
It's a privilege to wear out.
Yes. So
hopefully it won't be too long. My wearing is out.
But you're eager to get back. You don't want to stop working, and you continue to tirelessly serve. How can you encourage the audience to do that, wherever they are?
Look at the need. Here in America, wherever you are, there are needy people, people that maybe don't have physical or material needs, but they need the gospel. And so I think if you look at the need and you're loving the Lord, you'll see through his heart and his eyes the needs of people. That'll keep you busy.
And I know after 64 years of ministry. You can't give us just one story, but is there something you'd like to share with the audience?
We've been through several wars in Jordan. I remember one time Eleanor and I were under house arrest because of it was a civil war in the 70s, and we were in a smaller rented building then, and we need to feed our patients. And so I was praying. I said, Lord, I've got 16 patients. We tried to send as many home as we could, but these were too far away to go home. And I said, I need food for these patients. They all had tuberculosis and they need good nutrition. And I thought, I knew all the verses, my God shall supply all needs. I thought, but I've got 16 patients and some staff members to feed. And I knew God could do it, but I thought, it was early in the morning and we fed them lunch about noon. And then one of the terrorists came, we treated him for some other, it wasn't an injury, he had a cold or something. And he said, come down to the door. So I went out and everybody was saying, don't talk to terrorists, they might shoot your head off. And he said, you took care of me when I had a cough or something minor. And he said, go away, open the door, and come back after 15 minutes. So the family inside said, don't do it, you're crazy. I said, there was something about him I liked. So I waited for 15 minutes on the clock, and I went to the door, and as I opened it, there was vegetables and meat and yogurt, the things that we Arabs love, and our wonderful Arab bread. And so God did it. And I thought, and somebody said to me, will you accept stuff from the terrorists? I said, God used ravens to feed Elijah, so he can use one of the terrorists to feed us. And he did. And one other wonderful supply just happened recently. Our patients like to eat with their hands. It's traditional. And they like rice that sticks together. You make little balls of rice. And the lady in the kitchen said, Reisa, that's what they call me, I can't find any sticky rice. I said, of course, there's plenty of sticky rice. I'll go to the market and I'll find it. So I went to the market to shame her. And I went to a couple of traders, and they said, don't even look. There's none in the country. I thought, well, she was right. But I said, well, I just have to learn to eat with a spoon or eat with rice, like long grain rice doesn't stick together. And the next day, I got a call from a non-Christian person, and he said, I've got a gift for the hospital. I said, could I ask what it is? He said, well, it's good. And he was very, will you accept it? I thought, yes, I can. If it's something bad, I can toss it. And the next 2 days after I couldn't find the sticky rice, he brought a ton of organic Taiwanese short grain rice. God's interested in little things.
It makes me cry that God supplies all your needs according to his will. So hearing your story, I didn't realize you were a prodigal. Is that how you connected so well to Franklin? That you saw something in him early on?
He didn't impress me because he was Billy Graham's son. I met him first in Beirut in Lebanon, and he looked like a hippie, beard, long hair. And that in spite of the way he looked, there was something genuine about him. He didn't pretend to be anything he wasn't. And so one day he was telling me I knew he was rebelling. I'd heard stories, many stories, and I thought, he'll get over it. He'll come round, because I'd been there and done that. And I'd seen what God did in my life. And so one day he said, I'm going to go to Alaska, make a lot of money. We were building the hospital at that time. I said, come to Mafraq. You won't get money, but you can build. And so he went back to his parents. It was God's time for this kid. I mean, it was, late teens. And So he went to his parents and said he'd met some lady missionaries that needed a car. And he said to me once, he said, it's a wonder God didn't strike me dead for lying. But his mother said, well, where's he want this car for? And they said, Eleanor Salto. And she grew up with Eleanor Salto as missionary kids in Korea. They went to high school together. And so here it was, God's way of bringing this young man from medium-sized rebellion to Mafraq, where he worked so hard. We explained to him the cultural things that we expected from him. We never had to do it again.
And that's why you've been, from the beginning, of Samaritan's Purse, and you knew Dr. Bob Pierce as well.
One day, Franklin came back to the States, talked to Bob Pierce about us, and one day Eleanor and I were in the hospital, and this man came up in a big taxi, and obviously a foreigner. He didn't identify himself. He said, I'd like to see the hospital. We thought, so we brought him through, and we were just moving in to the hospital, and we were poor in those days. God's blessed us since then. But he looked through the whole of the hospital, and he asked me my name, and then he asked Eleanor's, and he said, what's your name? She said, Eleanor Salto. He said, I knew Stan Salto in Korea because Bob Pierce had a big project with the Korean orphans. And so I thought, after he'd gone, I said, Eleanor, did you know who he was? She said, never in my life. And we were still not sure because he thought we'd know who he was. But Franklin didn't tell us that he told him to come out and see us. So after we were, Eleanor's father was still alive, and she phoned her father, and she said, do you know somebody that worked with orphans in Korea? He said, Bob Pierce. So Bob Pierce, he came to Mafraq when he was near to death with leukemia. He wanted to die in Mafraq. I said, Bob, you can't. The whole of America will rise up if you die in Mafraq. And Franklin was there by then he was on the way back to being a strong soldier of the Lord. And, I mean, it's a God thing, too, to see his strength today. And Bob Pierce had made Franklin kneel on the floor in our living room, and he dedicated him to a life with Samaritan's Purse. Now, I think Franklin was scared spitless, but it was one of those things that God does. And then you see, many years later, you see what the fruition of a prayer.
I love the web that the Lord did, to have all of you connected in one way or another, but it's not an accident. The Lord was in this, and all he wants is our faithful obedience, and he will use it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It truly is a treasure to hear these stories from you. As we close, could you also share, in 64 years of ministry, how has the Lord grown and strengthened your prayer life? And can you give the audience some tips to pray and to strengthen that prayer life?
I think you've got to be deliberate. It's not easy. And there are always good things that will take us away from prayer life. And I found when I had babies in my room, the kid would get frantic just as I'd open my Bible. And so I find a time when, for mothers, when you're not bowed down with kids screaming to be fed, fighting each other, as kids do, and just find a time in your day when you can be alone, even if it's getting up that much earlier. I've got into the habit of getting up too early for the West, and I still wake up at 4 o'clock. I think Satan attacks our prayer life with good things. Mothers, you've got 40,000 kids demanding attention every minute of the day, but there is a time. So I thought, fight to find a time when you can put the kids down for naps or bribe them with food or something that they like to do and just spend time with the Lord. And as you pray, you'll find more and more things to pray for. And I find that I used to get by with a certain amount of time, and now people say, pray for me, and I do try to pray for people as they ask that I will pray for them. So I think you've got to be very deliberate and very conscious that Satan's going to try and steal the prayer life from you.
I just love Aileen's story. Her devotion to the Lord and his calling on her life has left a legacy in Jordan and all throughout Samaritan's Purse. She didn't live out of fear or comfort. The Lord was the ruler and the author of her life and over every single decision. And so I hope it challenged you today, as it did to me, even listening again. Every time I spent time with Aileen, I was challenged in my faith. And I was challenged to ask myself, am I living out of fear, or am I stepping out into what God's called me to? 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control." And so again, I hope this encourages you today to step out in faith in what God's called you to do. Have a great week. Thank you so much for listening.